Okay. Well,
Good
we
morning.
welcome everybody to today's Rotary Club of New York meeting. Today is August 4th, 2022. You are guests and members of the Rotary Club of New York today, the club number 6, host club of America, so named by Paul Harris. We were founded in 1909, and we're very happy that after all those years, we still have a wonderful club with many, many wonderful people. And today we will have an excellent speaker, Dr. Jeffrey Gurian, who will be introduced in a little while by our president, Levent Oscourt. What we do first, however, is we play the Star Spangled Banner, and Audrey Levine, our pianist and member, will play that for us. Audrey, go ahead. Thank you very much, Audrey. Well done as always.
Thank you.
A very warm welcome to everyone today. Once again, we are the Rotary Club of New York, club number 6 in the world. I would like to just acknowledge before we go to the official program, a few of the guests that are in our little Zoom windows today. We'll start, of course, with our dear friend Thilo von Depschitz, Wiesbaden-Kochbrunnen. We already saw him yesterday on a meeting with the Rotary Club of Bonn-Siegburg, who is represented as well here today. So we are very happy that they're joining us after we had the pleasure of attending their meeting yesterday. Levent and myself and a few others of our club attended a very, very wonderful presentation of Thilo. And Thilo is actually coming to New York soon. So we will all have a hopefully very nice camaraderie with Thilo and his family, I'm assuming. So Gustavo Reich, welcome, herzlich willkommen. And all the other visitors from all over the world. I see also Jürgen Wettlauf here. I just had to Google him because I did like the last name very much, and I noticed that he's a German dentist. So that's also very exciting, the diversity in both culture and professions that we have. It's amazing. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you our great president, Levent Oscourt, and he will lead us into the introduction of our wonderful speaker today. Levent.
Thank you, Andreas. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being and joining us today. I have the honor of introducing our guest speaker today, who is often described as a true Renaissance man. He's not only a doctor with 20 years on the board of the Association of Spirituality and Psychotherapy and a former clinical professor at NYU in oral medicine and orofacial pain, but he's one of the only doctors with a long-standing career in comedy. He's been featured with a cover story in the New York Times and in every major network and radio station based in New York for his work on stress-related illness, and having worked with huge stars ranging from Rodney Dangerfield to Joan Rivers and to stars of today like Nick Kroll and John Mulaney. He's an Amazon best-selling author with 8 books, the last 3 on happiness, a radio personality, a thought leader, a motivational speaker, with a documentary film about himself that came out last year. He's going to talk to us about today about thinking positively with the concept from his first book on happiness, Healing Your Heart by the Changing Your Mind, a spiritual and humorous approach to achieving happiness, available on Amazon. So please help me welcome Dr. Jeffrey Gurian.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here with you guys. And I want to start out by thanking Andreas Rungacher and Levent for having me today. It's a great opportunity, you know, and I had always known about Rotary, especially the Rotary Club of New York, but I actually looked it up and I found such great information about it. And I wanted to just talk about that for a minute, that the mission of Rotary clubs is to provide service to others, promote integrity, and advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace through our fellowship of business, professional, and community leaders. And those thoughts really resonate with me because my goal is always to put out positive energy to the universe. And Rotary's there are two official mottos: service above self, and one that started in 1911. I believe you said that your group started in 1909. It said at the second Rotary Convention in Portland, Oregon, they approved the motto, "He profits most who serves best," as the Rotary motto. And I like to talk a lot about gratitude and service. Before I start my talk, which has an unusual title called "Don't Believe Your Thoughts," I want to touch on my background a little bit. As Levent stated, and I've been on the board of the Association for Spirituality and Psychotherapy for more than 20 years. In 1999, I approached Dr. Henry Grayson, who is the founder of the National Institute of the Psychotherapies. And he had this group called the Association for Spirituality and Psychotherapy. And what they did was they were trying to encourage psychotherapists to incorporate a spiritual approach in their work. Now, at the time, I was a clinical professor at NYU in oral medicine and orofacial pain. And you might wonder, well, what's the connection between that? Well, very often when people are under stress, the way they have been for the last 3 years all over the world because of the pandemic and because of everything that's been going on, they experience a lot of physical symptoms. And when people wake up in the morning with their neck hurting and pain in their neck, probably the last person in the world that they would think to tell would be their dentist. Why would you ever tell your dentist that your neck hurts, right? And so I'm teaching in the clinic and I'm seeing all these people come in, and part of my questionnaire to them was about physical body pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, back pain, because a lot of people don't know that because of stress, people tend to clench and grind their teeth. And in this country alone, I don't know how it is in Europe, but in this country alone, there's more than 150 million people who suffer with what they think are migraine headaches that are really musculoskeletal headaches that are caused by overuse of the muscles of the jaw. The TMJ is called the temporomandibular joint. And it's considered energetically, it's considered a master joint. So it controls not only how your head feels, which is important enough because all your thoughts are coming from your head, but it also controls how your whole body feels, which is the reason why a lot of football players and weightlifters use an appliance, an intraoral appliance called a MORE appliance, a mandibular orthognathic repositioning appliance that holds their jaw in a particular way so that they have more physical strength. So I was telling Dr. Henry Grayson that people who are being treated for emotional illness very often are experiencing physical symptoms that are not being addressed because psychotherapists don't get this kind of training. And they're not aware that the muscles from the jaw attach into the temple region, into the occipital region behind your head, and even into the shoulders, into the trapezius region. So that when people wake up in the morning with physical pain, it can be from stress and it can be TMJ, and that has to be addressed. And the spiritual nature of the work, I created something that I call STAR therapy, STAR. And STAR is an acronym that stands for Spiritual, Transformational, Affirmative Resonance Therapy. And I'll explain that to you. But first, I always talk about the difference between spirituality and religion. And by the way, I was very, very glad to hear the Star Spangled Banner being played. It's a very patriotic organization as well. And I really appreciate that. So I always talk about the difference between spirituality and religion, which is a very important concept to grasp, because religion can be wonderful for people, but it tends to divide us because it puts you in a category, and other people not of your religion are automatically outside your category. And what spirituality does is it brings us together, because all it asks is that you believe in a force greater than yourself. And you could call it anything you want. You could call it nature, the universe, or God, whatever is comfortable to you, as long as you realize that it isn't you. Because when you think that you're running everything in your life, then you tend to blame yourself when things are going wrong. Or I shouldn't even say wrong, when things are going in a way that you wouldn't like them to go. There's a tendency to blame ourselves. And many people suffering with emotional illness are living with thoughts like, I could have done this, I should have said that, I wish I had done this. They're living in the past and they're fearing the future, and they're missing the now. They're not in the present. And so it's very important to incorporate certain spiritual thoughts into your mind, because one of the main concepts that I work with is that you can't get better with the same mind that got you sick. If you're experiencing emotional illness, you need new thoughts. And those new thoughts are very often spiritual wisdom. For instance, when let's say you're attempting to achieve something in your life and you're having a hard time getting there. Very often people will feel like they're the ultimate victim of the universe, that nothing works out for me. Things work out for other people, but not for me. And the spiritual way of looking at it is that the universe is sending me a message that maybe I'm not supposed to have the thing I wanted, but I'm supposed to have something better than that. And if I got the thing I thought I wanted, I wouldn't be available for the really good thing that's coming to me. And the problem is that we have to have patience. And patience is very difficult for most people, because as human beings, we want everything that we want right now. And that's kind of natural for us. So I call my talk, Don't Believe Your Thoughts, because interestingly enough, all of us are holding thoughts that are not valid for us. And in my own life, I use my life as an example. I stuttered very badly from the time I was 6 or 7 years old through my 20s and beyond. And I stuttered so badly that I couldn't say my name. I could never say Gurian. And most stutterers have a very hard time saying their own names. And I realized one day, well, when I went to college, I made myself run for the president of the freshman class. And I told myself if I could win this election, I wouldn't have to stutter anymore, because I had a feeling it had to do with how I felt about myself with other people. You see, I was only 16 years old when I started college. I was very young, and I didn't really feel like I fit in. I came from a high school where people told me that I was popular, but I didn't really feel it. When I went to school in those days, they used to have these things in the yearbook. They would vote for the prettiest girl and the handsomest guy and the best athlete and the most talented. And I played the piano and the drums, and they named me most talented. But I never really felt like I was part of something. And when I went to college, as I said, I made myself run for the president of the freshman class. It was a very big college, fed in by 7 different high schools. And I didn't know any kids except from my own high school. And I couldn't say my name. I could never say Gurian. Sometimes I could get out Jeffrey, but that was about it. So I had other kids introduce me to kids that I didn't know and say, vote for Jeffrey, he's running for president. Anyway, I won the election and I was the president of the whole freshman class, and I still stuttered. And it was a great lesson for me, because it taught me that outside validation in life doesn't work. It doesn't matter how many people compliment you and tell you that you're wonderful and talented and fantastic. It matters what you think of yourself. And that started me on a journey of learning about myself, because I realized one day that I didn't stutter when I was alone. I only stuttered when I was trying to talk to somebody else, which told me that it's not a true disability, because if a man has a limp, he limps in every room of his house. He can't go into a room and close the door and walk perfectly. When I was alone, then I was given the grace to figure out that there was truly nothing wrong with me. There was something that I created in my mind because I had faulty thinking. And somewhere along the way, I accumulated negative thoughts about myself. And to be very honest with you, I felt that I would never be successful. And I don't know where these negative thoughts came from. And I'm going to get into that in a minute. But I grew up thinking that I would never have things that other people took for granted. I felt that I would never be successful or never have a profession. I thought I would never be married and have children. I thought I would never own a home. I didn't even think I'd ever have my own apartment. And I don't know where those things came from. But it turned out that I achieved all of those things and more. But I didn't understand that. I had these very negative thoughts. And I call them heart wounds. Well, as you can see, I no longer stutter. And I worked on myself for many, many years to release myself from the bondage of stuttering. And that's how I became involved in the power of thought, how powerful our thoughts are and how they change our lives. And why I take the liberty of saying that all of us are holding thoughts that are not valid for us. From the time we're children, every time someone hurts your feelings or breaks a promise to you or lies to you or breaks up with you in a relationship or lets you down in some way, we hold that inside of us in our heart chakra. If you're familiar with the term chakras, they're energy centers. It's an ancient Sanskrit word that stands for energy centers. And there are 7 of them in the body. And the heart chakra is the most powerful. Each of the chakras has to be connected to the heart in order to achieve its maximum function. And we hold on to these things. You know, every single one of us can remember. I don't know how it is in Europe, but in America, we have this silly saying that they teach children: sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never harm you, which is the furthest from the truth that there ever was. Because all of you, all the bruises you got as children healed up a long time ago. But every single one of us can remember something that someone said to us that hurt our feelings in some way, as if it was yesterday. For some reason, the traumatic events in our life are more deeply embedded in our consciousness than the happy events. And again, so I call these things heart wounds. And heart wounds affect your self-esteem, they affect your self-confidence, and they affect every decision that you make in your life. If you were ever bullied as a child, those things stay with you. And even though we didn't want to believe what other kids said about us, and for some reason, a lot of kids seem to have a mean streak, and they choose someone who they feel doesn't fit in, and they make fun of them. And you're supposed to outgrow that by about the time you're about 10 years old, I think. Unfortunately, a lot of adults still do that. They try and pass it off as having a sense of humor. People will often say something mean to you, and when you question them about it, they're very quick to say, oh, I was just kidding. And because I'm in the comedy world, I say to them, well, I have a pretty good sense of humor. What was the joke? Because I didn't get it. And the joke was very often supposed to be about us. So these heart wounds that we have, they affect every decision that we make in our lives, because every time you're called upon to make a decision, you use your thoughts to figure out what to do. Who else's thoughts can you use but your own? And if your thoughts are faulty, your decisions are not going to work for you. So it's the reason why people have these patterns in their lives that don't seem to work out. They get the same bad job over and over again, the same bad relationship over and over again. And the only common denominator is you. The other people change, but you keep showing up. So very often it's something that you're putting out that's allowing this to happen. And so I was fascinated by that. And I used that to cure myself of stuttering. And because a lot of what I do is about gratitude and service, I now work with stutterers all over the world as an avocation to teach them how not to stutter. You know, there's a thing called the serenity prayer. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it says, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's the most important line of all. The wisdom to know the difference. Because if I wasn't given the grace to know the difference, I'd still be stuttering today. If I didn't understand that I could change that I could literally change my mind, I would still be stuttering today. But the power of thought is so powerful that you can actually change what's going on in your life through intention. I knew I wanted to be a doctor, and I knew I couldn't be a stuttering doctor because no one looks at a person who's stuttering and says, what a calm, confident person. A person who's stuttering comes across as being a nervous person. And so I knew that it wasn't acceptable to me to go through my whole life as a stutterer. I knew that I had to make a change, and I was literally obsessed with curing myself. And I think about it every day. Not a day goes by when I don't express gratitude that I can speak, and I can speak fluently, and I can carry a message. And it seems that that's one of my purposes, is to carry a message. So when I recovered, well, let me say it this way. I use it in all areas of my life. About 6 years ago, I had a heart attack that came out of nowhere. And the night before, I had been at 3 different social events. I was fine. I had never been seriously ill a day in my life. And the next day, suddenly I had a heart attack. They said it was a serious heart attack. They call it a widowmaker heart attack. It was the major artery to the left side of my heart. And it happened in the middle of the day. And I had had an appointment with a chiropractor that day. I had never been to him before. It was the first time. And it was pouring rain in New York City. And it may sound silly, but I don't like to go out in the rain because of my hair. That's the truth. It sounds silly, but I believe in honesty. So I often don't go out if it's raining, right? So, but I decided to go, and I was getting this weird pain in my chest, this weird feeling. And I thought, well, maybe it was from working out. And I was rubbing it, and it started feeling better. I'm like, well, it's probably not a heart attack because you can't rub away a heart attack. But so I decided to go, and I get on the subway to go to this chiropractor, and the pain is getting worse. And I'm rubbing and rubbing, and it's getting worse and worse. And I get off the subway, and I don't know how many of you have been on the Manhattan subways, but it's not the place to be when you're not feeling well. It's not even the place to be when you are feeling well, but certainly when you're not feeling well, it's not a good place to be. And I get to the street, and I have about 6 blocks to walk. And for some reason, I turned down 50th Street. And I know some of you are from Europe, so you may not be familiar with Radio City Music Hall, but it's a very famous entertainment place in New York. I turned down that block, and the pain is getting pretty intense. And I see a police car with 4 cops in it. So I knock on the window, and in my most polite way, I say, I'm sorry to bother you, but I think I'm having a heart attack. And the policeman says to me, well, I think you should go to the hospital. And I said, well, that's why I'm telling you. I'm not just telling everyone. I thought that they would tell me to get into the car and they'd put the siren on and take me to the hospital. But that's not what happened. He said to me, well, we're stuck in traffic, so it'll probably be faster if you walk. And I said, well, walk. I'm like, now you have to picture, I'm standing in the rain with an umbrella, it's pouring, and I'm telling the cops I have a heart attack, and he's telling me to walk to the hospital. So I'm like, well, where's the nearest hospital? And he didn't know. So he takes out his phone and he starts looking for hospitals. None of the 4 cops knew where there was a hospital. And then he says to me, do you have Google Maps? So I said, no, I don't. So he said, well, I think you should download Google Maps. And that's when I walked away, because I said, this is a Woody Allen movie. This can't even happen, because this is ridiculous. I'm telling the cops I have a heart attack, and he's telling me to download Google Maps. So I could only get another half a block because the pain was getting very intense. So I stopped another cop who happened to be on the corner. It's a very busy street in Manhattan, right at Radio City Music Hall. And he's on a walkie-talkie. And I say the same thing to him. Sorry to bother you. I think I'm having a heart attack. And he says to me, oh, well, stand on the side over here. So a couple of minutes go by and I said to him, are they coming? He said, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't call them yet. No one seemed too upset by the fact that I thought I was having a heart attack. And my take on it afterwards was because I was very calm. For some reason, I stayed very calm. I think it was my spiritual training, because I learned that no matter what's happening in your life, that's your path. You can't only believe in certain principles when it's convenient for you. You either believe or you don't believe. It's like believing in a higher power. You can't believe in it once in a while. You either believe or you don't. And I thought to myself, this is a very strange thing. For whatever reason, I'm experiencing this thing that's probably a heart attack, and no one's taking it seriously. So a fire engine finally comes, because in New York City, all the firemen are EMTs, they're emergency medical technicians. So a fire truck comes, 4 or 5 firemen get off the truck and say to me, so who's the patient? And I said, me. And the guy goes, well, climb up on the truck. And I said, really? And he goes, now we're just effing with you, like that. And I couldn't believe it. No one really took it seriously. Finally, they got me in an ambulance and they got me to the hospital. And wouldn't you know, the emergency room door wouldn't open. The guy had to actually climb up on he had to climb up physically on the door to get me in the hospital. He goes, don't worry, one way or another, we're going to get you in there. And it turned out I laid in the emergency room for 9 hours until they got me into the cardiac unit. But luckily, they had started me on a blood thinner, and that's what saved my life. The next day, they put me on an operating table to unplug my heart. They put a stent in my heart. And I was joking with the surgeon on the operating table. I wasn't fully asleep, and I felt what they were doing. And I said to the surgeon, I feel you in my heart, not in a romantic way, but I feel you in my heart. And the whole surgical team started to laugh. And he said, I'll give you more anesthetic. And he came to my room later that day. And he said, I have to give you a hug. He goes, I don't know how you were able to stay in such a good mood. He said, but I want you to know you're a miracle. And I said, well, you're the miracle because you're the guy that saved me. And it's about positive thinking. It's about learning to understand that happen in your life that you may label bad, but very often, sometimes something good comes out of them. Like I talk about a lot of personal things in my own life. For instance, I went through a divorce, and a divorce is never a happy thing for anybody, but my ex-wife remarried and adopted 2 children and had another one of her own. And those 2 children needed to be adopted, and that little girl that she had needed to be born. And that couldn't have happened had I stayed. And because of the principles that I talk about, we're all very friendly now. I have a big extended family. I celebrate all holidays with my ex-wife and her husband and all of our kids. And we get along very well, and we celebrate things together because of the principles that I'm talking about, spiritual wisdom. So, you know, I also like to talk about kindness. These past 3 years have been very hard on all of us. And I was in the hospital with COVID double pneumonia. The day they declared it a pandemic in the United States on March 11th, 2020, I came down with COVID double pneumonia. As you can tell, I'm a trendsetter, so I went right out and got it. I didn't want to wait. I got it right away, and it was a nightmare. I'm laughing about it now, but it was horrible. For the first 2 weeks, I was alone. Of course, we were all alone, and I couldn't have anybody to come and take care of me. I wouldn't allow my kids to come. And I had put myself on Z-Pak. As the doctor, I always keep antibiotics in the house. And I put myself on Z-Pak because on the third day, it went to my throat. And they were warning people, don't go to the emergency room if you have comorbidities. And because of my heart history, I was afraid to go to the hospital because nobody knew anything in those days. It was March 11th of 2020. The virus was new. And they were warning people with a heart condition to stay away from the emergency room. And after 2 weeks, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to call an ambulance. And when the ambulance men came to my home to get me, they were wearing hazmat suits. And one of the ambulance workers took my hand and he said to me, don't worry, you're going to be okay. And I can't tell you what that little act of kindness meant. When you're so sick, something like that. And I always like to stress that kindness, because Rotary clubs talk about that kind of stuff, the interpersonal connections, friendship, and being there for other people. And when they took me to the hospital, they wheeled me into the emergency room and they put me in a cubicle next to a woman who was screaming. And I'm not exaggerating, she was screaming with every breath that she took. And I was in a very weakened condition. My circulatory system was collapsing. If you know about blood pressure, normal blood pressure is 120/80. My 80 had dropped to 42. They had a very hard time even finding a vein to start an IV. I was very weak, and it wasn't good for me to be laying next to someone who was screaming like that. And there was no other place to put me because New York was the epicenter of the virus, and they had run out of rooms. They were putting people in the hallway already. And I had to step outside myself. I had to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. I had to do what I write about in my books. And I had to step outside of my own thinking and start thinking about this poor woman next to me. Literally every breath that she took. And they were almost going to send me home. They were looking for reasons to not keep people at the hospital. And then they x-rayed my lungs. I asked for a cardiologist and there was none. A pulmonary specialist came to see me and he said, I'm sorry to tell you, but you have COVID double pneumonia and we're going to find a room for you. And they emptied out the cancer wing and they created a COVID wing. And for the first 2 days, I was in isolation. And on the third day, they put me in a room with 3 other very sick men, all with the virus. And I was surrounded. Only one person at a time was allowed in our room, but nurses would come to my bed and hold my hand and encourage me and say, you're going to make it. And again, I want to talk about kindness. The power of that was amazing. And I used to be a regular on Sirius XM radio, which is a huge radio station in America. And the host of the show announced on the radio that I was in the hospital. And I started getting literally hundreds of messages from people sending prayers and positive thoughts. And I was too sick to answer anybody, but I have to tell you, I'm a very big believer in the power of prayer and the power of thought. And just knowing that so many people were thinking of me, it really helped me to recover. It took me several months. They sent me home after 4 days. They just needed to stabilize me. When they got my oxygen level up to 96%, they felt that I was stable enough to go home. And when the ambulance workers drove me home, they came into my apartment and they saw a million pictures of me with all these famous comedians. And they started asking me questions about show business. And I did my best to talk to them for about 15 minutes. And I'm like, guys, I'm really tired. I need some rest. I still have COVID. You know, they wrapped me in sheets to take me home from the hospital. They even wrapped my face. And I said, when you wheel me into the building, please unwrap my face. I don't want them to think I passed away. It would be, you know, it was a crazy time. But I can't emphasize enough the power of kindness. And it's another thing I like about Rotary, that one of the principles that they espouse is friendship and meeting people from all over the world, because the truth is that we're all the same. You know, it's the power. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the 12-step programs. I do a lot of work with people in 12-step programs, people who are addicted to alcohol and drugs and things like that. And a spiritual approach seems to be the only thing that works. And it's amazing. Interpersonal relationships are very, very important. So I want to say again, I want to talk for the last few minutes about things like cellular memory and fear, things that stop us from accomplishing things in our lives. I talk about cellular memory because it's fascinating to me. It simply means that every single thing that's happened to you since you're a child is still inside of you. And it's the reason why we, you know, you can hear a song you like and it'll remind you of the boy or girl you liked in the 3rd grade. Or you'll smell a perfume and you're like, wow, my kindergarten teacher wore that perfume. And there's no thought involved. It's automatic. It's like a sensory deja vu. And because of that, because all of these things are trapped in our cellular memory, throughout our day, we're triggers that we don't even realize, triggers that trigger an old memory within. So suddenly you can be happy one minute and suddenly feel sad. And that's also because we're a lot more sensitive than we even acknowledge. And especially men. I like to talk about that too. I happen to be an empath, so I can't help feel what you feel. I internally, there was a time in my life, if I was with you and you were sad, I was sadder for you than you were. I overfelt my feelings. I'm an antenna for feelings, which made me very effective in taking care of people, but very difficult in life in general, because when you feel things so deeply, everything feels overwhelming. And I had to learn through my spiritual study to learn to use my sensitivity more as a strength than as a weakness. And I talk about that a lot because a lot of men avoid their sensitivity. They look at it as a weakness. Men aren't taught that being sensitive is a good thing. But I think that if more people were sensitive, that it would be a nicer world that we lived in. I think people would treat each other better. So I like to stress that with sensitivity. And I like to talk about fear also, because all of us are facing fear, especially in these last few years, you know, and fear is a bully. Fear wants you to stay at home and not accomplish anything. And I've been fighting fear all my life. So after I recovered from the heart attack and from COVID double pneumonia, I started writing books on happiness. And in my introduction, they mentioned this first book. The first book I wrote was called Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind, a spiritual and humorous approach to happiness. Do you have any idea how hard it is to get a dog to sit in lotus position? It's not an easy thing, but I explain healing your heart. It's not about heart disease. It's about letting go of the heart wounds that we accumulate from the time that we're children in order to lead happy lives. One of the things that I teach people is to create your own happiness center. If you came to my house, you'd think that little children live there. My house is filled with balloons and crayons and toys because balloons are a symbol of happiness. You never see balloons at a funeral. You only see balloons at happy times. And I believe that it's very important to stay connected to your inner child. I'm sure Andreas remembers how fun it was when you were a kid and your friends would come to your house and say, hey, can Andreas come out to play? That's not supposed to stop just because you grow up. Just because we grow up and we get serious and we have jobs and families and stuff, you're still supposed to stay connected to that inner child, because that inner child lives within you. And that inner child is the one that experienced a lot of the pains and the negative thoughts that were given to us by people, let's say this, by people who didn't necessarily have your best interests at heart. People gave us negative thoughts and we believed them. So again, in my own life, that's why I stuttered. And that's why I had to deal with a lot of other things in my life. I had to overcome a lot of obstacles. So I challenge myself on a daily basis to do things that make me uncomfortable. If the rest of the world can do them, then I feel that I need to do them too. My ultimate challenge was in 2019, I went to Japan all by myself. And that may not sound like a lot to some of you. Maybe you enjoy traveling, but traveling is very difficult for me. I have very bad ADHD. I get lost very easily. And I carry these fears of traveling. And that was, for some reason, I had always wanted to go to Japan. And 2 years in a row, 2 people who were supposed to go with me were not able to go. And on the 3rd year, I decided I wasn't going to wait for anybody else. I was going to go by myself. And that led me to write this book called Fight the Fear, Overcoming Obstacles That Stand in Your Way. I went to Japan. I took the 14-hour flight. I was lost every day. I used the little bit of Japanese that I had learned by studying Japanese 3 times. And I made it. And I proved to myself that there's nothing that I can't do that other people can do. I'm not talking about skydiving or something dangerous where your life is at stake. I'm talking about doing things that other people seem to do easily. A couple of days ago, I drove to Montreal to go to the biggest comedy festival in the world. It was the 40th anniversary of the Just for Laughs Festival. And I go every year. I've been going for more than 30 years. And they have me interviewing all the big comedy stars that win awards. And I'm on the red carpet with everybody. And that, believe me, it's not an easy thing to do. But I encourage myself. I tell myself, if other people can do it, I can do it too. And I carry this. I'm going to read a short statement to you that I hope will resonate with everybody. But it's a very powerful statement that I use in all my work. And it's called About Fear. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? Your playing small doesn't serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others won't feel insecure around you. We were born to manifest the glory within us. It's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. And what it simply means is that it's okay for you to be successful. It's okay for you to be a superstar. You don't have to make yourself less than to make other people feel better about themselves, because as you become successful, you inspire other people to let them know that they can do the same thing. So in my own small life, what I teach people is if I can stop stuttering and cure myself, you can also stop. And if I can face my fears and accomplish things that I thought I would never have, then you can do the same thing, because it's all about thought. And even though we look different and we have different names, we're all really the same, which is why we can identify when people are willing to share things about themselves that are very personal. And when I speak, that's what I do. I share things about myself that at one time I would be reluctant to share, but I feel that it gives people an opportunity to identify. And so I want to leave time for questions. I know that we need time for people to ask questions. So again, I just want to thank Andreas and Levent for allowing me to speak today. And I thank all of you for attending. I appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions besides this, I'm always open to people emailing me, Jeffrey@jeffreygurian.com, Jeffrey@jeffreygurian, Gurian.com. thank you all so much.
Thank you, Jeffrey, and it was a true pleasure. I mean, your energy is soothing, and I think I state this for everyone. It has been an absolute pleasure listening to your stories about life and kindness and all else. Very inspirational. We do have some questions. We start with our immediate past president, Gerard Schriffen.
Thank you, Andreas. And Dr. Gurian, I was fascinated by what you had to say because it reflects on what all of us go through in our lives, obviously. But I wanted to ask you this question. How much, or do you think that those experiences you had when you were younger, the stuttering, the pain you said you went through, do you think that contributed to your becoming a comedian?
That's a very interesting question. When I was 12 years old, I must have been a really weird kid because when I was 12 years old, I already decided what I wanted to do. My dad turned me on to comedy as a young kid and took me to comedy films. And when I was 12, I knew I wanted to be a doctor, but I knew my sensitivity would interfere because I didn't think I could handle life and death situations. So I decided that I wanted to be a cosmetic dentist, and I was already writing comedy. So my whole life was that split. I knew as a child, and most kids change their mind a million times. But when I was 12, I decided what I wanted to do, and I never changed. And as I get older, I look back at that and I say, it's interesting even to me that I knew at that young age, or that I felt that I needed to know where my life was going to go. And believe me, it's a very hard combination to do. While I was in practice, I was writing for very big comedy stars. And my nurse had strict instructions, never interrupt me with a patient unless it's for show business. And she would come in and she'd say, Dr. Rivers is on the phone and Dr. Lewis is calling. The only one no one believed was Dr. Dangerfield. If you're from the United States and you know Rodney Dangerfield.
Sure.
So my whole life was that split, and I managed, I don't know how, but I managed to make it work. And I always looked at things with a comedic way. To me, life is very funny, and it's important to have that point of view to help you get through the hard times, because there's always going to be hard times, but comedians learn to look at things in a humorous way. And that's what I try to do. And that's my goal, is to put out positive energy to the universe.
Do you think that the comedy is kind of a defense mechanism for some people?
For a lot of people, there's a lot of comics who use the stage as therapy. You know, they talk, like two of the comedians that just received big awards. One used her comedy special on Netflix to come out as being bipolar, and the other one used his Netflix special to come out as being gay, and that he came from a family of men who cheated on their wives. One had 23 children out of wedlock. So to me, I don't do, when I do comedy, I talk about things that I think are funny. I don't talk about anything that could be offensive or that's political. I just talk about what strikes me funny. But there are some comics, who, you know, I was very friendly with Gilbert Gottfried. If you know him, he was a wonderful comedy star who passed away very recently. And, you know, I knew him personally, but, you know, his personality came out on stage. Off stage, very quiet. A lot of comics were very depressed and weren't particularly popular in high school, and their personality comes out on stage. They developed, you know, a humorous personality to deal with the fact that they weren't that popular, or they weren't as good looking as they wanted to be, whatever, you know. People are attracted to humor. Everybody wants a laugh. It's a wonderful thing. It's not just a cliche. You know, laughter is a healing force, and it brings everyone together. And, you know, I love comedians that have multicultural audiences where everyone is laughing at themselves and at each other in a kind way. I hate mean-spirited comedy.
Any other questions?
Andreas, if I may digress just for 1 second to Thilo. Thilo, hallo an unsere Freunde in Deutschland. I'm sorry I missed your meeting yesterday, but I was in court all day talking about comedy. My last case didn't finish till almost 6, and I had decisions to write all night. So Apologies.
No, no, all is good.
Thilo, hast du eine Frage vielleicht? Gehen wir.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for your talk, Jeffrey. Very personal. I didn't expect this. So it's really, I appreciated your talk very much.
Thank you.
I was thinking about the dark side you went through with stuttering, and I had almost the same question Jara was asking, if it's essential for good comedians to have negative life experiences like fears and stuttering to create on the other side positive and funny thoughts. And I was thinking about Robin Williams, who had a very funny side, but was suffering of depression. And I think I read that you guys worked together, right?
Yes, yes. I knew Robin for many years. There was a place in Manhattan in the 80s called Columbus Cafe, and all the celebrities hung out there. And they wanted to do, there was a very famous comedy producer named Jack Rollins, who was managing Woody Allen, Robin Williams, and Billy Crystal. And he wanted to do a sitcom on television about my story, about a dentist who wanted to be in show business. And that's how I met Robin so many years ago. And he wanted Billy Crystal to play me. But Billy was in too many projects at the time, and it never really happened, as most projects in show business never really happened. People have a lot of ideas, but it was a shame with Robin. Robin was always on. His personality was, he was on a whole different level than most people. And that can be very draining. And comedians can be, you know, I talked about sensitivity. Comedians can be the ultimate in sensitivity. They feel things very deeply. And, you know, in order for a person to get to that point where they actually take their own lives, things have to be so dark. I mean, it was shocking to people because you couldn't be more famous, you couldn't be more rich, you couldn't be more well-loved than somebody like Robin Williams. And if he could reach that level where he felt the need to do something like that, what's the hope for everyone else? You know, it really struck people because of his persona. And so only comedians that talk about events in their lives on stage have to, you know, there's that old saying, all comedians are really depressed, you know, but it depends on what you talk about on stage. I talk about traveling and things that confuse me. You know, like, don't you hate it when you wake up in the morning and you're really in the mood to vote and there's no election? What do you do in a case like that, right? You know, and I talk about things that strike me funny.
Yeah.
You know? But some comics, as I said, they go on stage and they talk about the trauma in their lives because that's how they get better. They feel that the audience can relate. And the audience does relate because there's nobody who doesn't have trauma in their lives. There's nobody who's not experiencing stress, well, you know, but we don't know it because we don't tell each other. Everyone's fine. You see somebody say, how you doing? Everyone, they're all in the fine family. Everyone's fine, you know, but the truth, but if you, because people don't have the time to really listen to each other. And that's also a sad thing. It's why we pay psychotherapists to listen to us.
It's actually funny, Jeffrey, it's funny that you say this because being European, as a European, we're not really used to that. Wie geht es dir heute? How are you today? If somebody asks you that in Europe, they will go into a long rant and explain how they really are. And here in the States, at the very beginning, I tried to do that. I told them exactly how I felt, and people look at me with that stare, like the answer was, you're fine, right?
I agree. Yeah. That was exactly my experience. Yeah, when I was in New York, I was also telling a long story how I felt yesterday and how I'm feeling today. So that was not what they expected me to answer.
Right. New Yorkers are in a very big hurry. They have no time, you know, and it's so funny. I have to say, doing a talk on Zoom is like doing comedy on Zoom. You know what that's like? Doing comedy on Zoom is like standing on a highway and yelling out jokes to passing cars. That's how effective it is. It's very hard to perform to black boxes. Most people, I really appreciate those of you who turned on their cameras because all these black boxes, it's very difficult to speak to an audience when you're just talking to a black box. Can you imagine telling jokes and you can't hear the laughter? It's a nightmare. It's the kind of thing, but we make the best of what we have. But there's so many people who are attending this that didn't turn on their camera. And I didn't want to sound like I was chastising people, but it's a good idea if you're attending a lecture to let people at least know that you're there. It's nice to get some feedback. It's a wonderful thing. Is there anyone else who has any questions? I'm willing
actually, Jeffrey, do you have any more material, for instance, from your show this evening in Scarsdale? I think we can all just use a good laugh also.
What I could say that would be that would be appropriate. Let me see. Well, I was talking about confusion. Like, a lot of things confuse me. Like that night when you're supposed to turn your clocks ahead an hour at 2 a.m. I don't know if you do that in Europe. In this country, we turn our clocks ahead an hour, daylight savings time. You turn your clock ahead an hour at 2 a.m. What are you supposed to meet somebody at 2 a.m.? What time do you show up? At 1:59, you're still a minute early. 1 minute later, you're an hour late. You can't do it. It's not possible to do. You know what else confuses me? You never see an infant that looks familiar to you. You never hear anybody say, you see that infant over there? I could swear I know him from somewhere. You never hear that. You know what else? So many things confuses me. The headbutt confuses me. How come only the guy receiving the headbutt gets hurt and not the guy using his head like a freaking hammer? It's like, what is there, some tacit agreement in the headbutt community that only one guy gets hurt at a time? Giving someone a headbutt makes no sense. Giving someone a headbutt is like shooting yourself, hoping to get the guy behind you. It makes no sense at all. Pants are important. I have no material on that. I just thought I'd let you know. No, I do have material.
Total non sequitur.
What's the story with ripped jeans? Ripped jeans. Everybody is wearing ripped jeans these days, right? There's no article of clothing that you could wear in such bad shape and have it considered perfectly acceptable, right? It's like you can't show up anywhere in a ripped shirt, a torn dress, a suit with holes in the knees, but jeans could be ripped to shreds and everybody loves it. I saw a girl last week just wearing pockets. That's all that was left. Both legs were completely gone, just pockets. That's all. $1,000. $1,000. Poor people could never wear ripped jeans. They can't afford them. Soon it'll be like that old time children's story, The Emperor's New Clothes. You'll be completely naked and people will go, hey, great jeans. So, you can come to my show tonight.
Great. Thank you.
I'm doing a new club in Scarsdale. I'll leave you with this. The weirdest thing happened to me today. Henry, oh, that's Jay. Yeah, okay. Hey, Jay, how are you?
Hey.
I'll leave you with this. The weirdest thing happened to me today. I got a postcard in the mail. Is that still a valid form of communication for 2020? A postcard? Who's sending postcards in 2022? What was your carrier pigeon sick? Sending someone a postcard is like saying, I want to write to you, but not that much. Think about it. When's the last time you got an important postcard, right? You never see anyone all excited, like, where you going? Oh, I just got this postcard from my girlfriend and I can't wait to read it. Well, turn it over. It's all right there. It's not even in an envelope. The postman already read it. Everyone in the post office read it. You're the last guy to see it. That's why they rarely send government secrets on a postcard. Postcards are usually mean anyway. All they say is, wish you were here. Well, if you wish I was there next time, invite me. You guys have been so fun.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Jay, did you have a question as well? Jay Leslie? Or I saw you unmuted yourself.
No, I wanted Jeffrey to know that I was laughing at his material.
Oh, that's
Thank you.
From jeans or not.
I have to say that he's a very famous musician, and it's so nice to see him here. Jay is known all over the United States and probably Europe too. I don't know, but he's a very famous musician. And it's great to see you, Jay. Thanks.
Good to you too.
So I hope that all of you will check out the Happiness books. A lot of the concepts are in these books, and Fight the Fear, Overcoming Obstacles That Stand in Your Way. And it's called Facing Adversity, Stories of Courage and Inspiration. And they're true life stories of people who overcome amazing difficulties to lead happy and meaningful lives. I always appreciate that. Some people have so much courage, born with very difficult obstacles to overcome, and yet they do. Some people are crushed by them, and some people manage to overcome them. And I'm so impressed with that. I was collecting those stories for more than 20 years. And again, during the pandemic, I had a lot of time on my hands. So I wrote all these books. I have 8 books now. I never thought I'd have even one. So it just shows you can accomplish if you put your mind to it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. We appreciate it so
very
much.
I want to thank Andreas and Levent for this opportunity.
Yeah.
And it was,
Levent, President Levent, did you want to still say something as well in closing?
For a wonderful talk, and I look forward to checking out those books because they're very interesting. So, and if you can send us your upcoming comedy schedules, I'm sure we're going to.
that would be great.
Thank you so much.
I'll be happy to put you on my VIP list. So thank you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you all for joining
us today.
You're welcome.
See you all soon.
Sending best wishes from Germany.
See you soon, Tilo.
So
See you in New York.
Yeah. Can't wait to be on the VIP list of Jeffrey.
Just send me an email and I'll put you on my list. When you come to New York, you'll come and visit.
Thank you.
Okay.
Tilo, let us know when you're coming to New York. I promise I'll take you to places that no one should have to go to.
Okay, it will be the first half of September. So we
fantastic.
will experience one day of the US Open, but as far as I know, I'm available on all other days.
Okay,
I keep you posted.
Keep me posted. Send me an email. We'll meet up. Good.
Yeah.
So if there are no other questions, I guess I'll sign off. Everybody, I wish you all well and have a great day.
Jeffrey, if I may, did you ever work at or still there at the NYU Dental School?
Yes, that's where I taught for 12 years.
Then I'm going to email you. I have a whole comedy routine for you.
Oh, yeah?
True. Absolutely true. Yes.
Okay, great. Okay.
Thank you for being with us.
Everybody. See you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks.